Hey, what's up, everyone? Today, I'm going to go through another code review lab and take a look at a challenge called Speedrun Records. So the description is Speedrun Hub is a community-driven speedrunning platform where gamers compete for world records across thousands of games. The site recently added a quick verification feature allowing users to submit run metadata via GET request for faster processing. Moderators have reported suspicious verified runs appearing without their approval. Review the PHP codebase to identify how unauthorized records might be getting marked as legitimate. This is going to be using PHP. We're looking for some sort of injection attack, and another tag is web security. So I did take a brief look at this lab, but for the most part, I'm going in pretty blind. This is a typical PHP application that hybrids both object-oriented concepts and principles with procedural-based objects and concepts in there. So we're going to get the best of PHP. This is going to be a lot of applications I see. So here's the object-oriented side, and then here's the procedural side, and then how can we mix them together? So there's no framework in here like Laravel or Cake PHP. We're going to get the best of both worlds for PHP. So one of the reasons I know like a lot of people hate this programming language is that very reason. Everything always looks very muddy and there's no consistency with it. But regardless, let's chat about what we see. I'll give you my perspective, approaching this like it would be a pen test. And I'm going to review the functions that I see, think about this out loud, and I want you just to have a general idea of like how I would approach this if this was an engagement. If you have the Code Review Lab subscription and want to sign in and follow along with me, feel free to do so. If you don't and you just want to hang out and watch the video and see how I do some code review, totally fine. The first file I'm going to start with is the database.php that's located in the includes. And the reason is I just want to see a general breakdown of how we are communicating with the database, something outside of our code base. So we create a database class, and then we have a constructor function here that is taking in a config.php file, which I don't see access to, but based off of what I see in this MySQLi object, it looks like it's instantiating or creating that connection to our database. And if we run into any issues, we'll throw this error out there as database connection failure, and that is that. And we have a couple functions down here. We have about 4. So get instance, query, prepare, and escape. And this looks like it's the means of just trying to communicate out to our database. So our query, prepare, and escape. So I don't see anything super crazy in here, but this is calling the connection that was made at the top. So this connection, which was set up right here. So our private connection variable, and then this is doing real escape string, prepare, and query, and then it's passing in these SQL queries, I imagine, based off of this. So this is kind of leading me to ask more questions than anything. I haven't really solved anything in my eyes except a breakdown of how we want to communicate to the database. And since we're using a constructor, I imagine we'll instantiate this database object, and this class, I mean, as an object in other files, and then that'll be how we actually query data out of the database. So the next file I want to look at in the includes directory is validation.php, and we went from object-oriented to now procedural, so this is going to be a file that it's just basically creating functions for us that do a few things. So this is going to be one to sanitize, and it's using HTML special chars, and I can actually copy this, and I'm going to start actually pulling up documentation on this and reading through this. So convert special characters to HTML entities. Strip tags will probably just then end up removing strip HTML and PHP tags from a string, and then trim, this will be the one that's removing white space. So strips white space or other characters from beginning and end of the string. So when I'm doing code review, and my recommendation, if you're ever doing a code review challenge on either like Hack the Box, Code Review Lab, whatever, always have documentation on hand. always have the official documentation if possible. You'll get a lot of good value from it. That's just my recommendation. Valid. So this basically is using to escape any sort of like bad naughty characters that would be passed to input. Validate video URL. So we have an array of allowed hosts. So YouTube, Twitch, Vimeo. That's being parsed in here. We're checking if it's set. So it is set. Just means that we actually have something set inside of it. So determines if a variable is declared and is different than null. So just make sure that whatever value in here is just not null, effectively. And then we'll loop through that. So for each allowed host, which is in the array as host, and then we'll do strip in here. Find the position of the first occurrence of a substring in a string. So your haystack, your needle, your offset, and then there's some warnings down here. Always be kind of observant of any warnings or alerts in documentation. It's a good habit that I will see in code review. Somebody's using a function, and then if you read the documentation, it just says be careful with this because if user supplied input gets here, this is how injection has a chance of arriving in your application. Validate time format. So we're doing some numeric or some time-based checks in here. Format the time, and then we're just kind of converting time in here. So nothing crazy, but learning a little bit more about this application. We're checking if is logged in, so that is set. So remember that's to make sure that this isn't null. So this session auto global in here. So let's chat about this quickly. So this is these are pretty common in PHP. These $_sessions. This is often described as a super global or automatic global variable. So this session is going to mean how PHP maintains state for HTTP, since HTTP is a stateless protocol. This is how PHP uses this to maintain persistence and connection for authenticated and unauthorized users. So we're checking if the user ID is set, and where this function here is moderator. So if not logged in, return false, which checks the function at the top. If we are logged in, then we're going to do we're going to use that DB database get instance. So that was instantiating that connection to the database, and then we're actually going to say select role from users where the ID equals, and then we have a placeholder here, and then we're finding this. This is going to be used to help prevent SQL injection. So it's checking the session ID or the user ID of the session, and then we'll run this, get the results, and then fetch this, and then I believe this always comes back as an array. So should actually just go back to the documentation tab. MySQLi fetch association, that's a different function though, but this is the result. But are they always different? Fetch associative array, yeah, so they're arrays, I believe, for different ones. So you have like MySQLi, you'll have PDO, that's just prepared data objects. It's different ways of doing kind of the same thing. I think PDO is more the industry standard at this point. MySQLi was something that I grew knowledge of back in, I want to say like around 2010. It could be completely different, and I can barely remember what I did yesterday. But regardless, MySQLi kind of stood for two things. The proper term was improved, and that was how it kind of helped improve the use of communicating to a database to avoid SQL injection attacks. But there's been a concept too around it, which MySQLi stood for MySQL incomplete. It was meant to leapfrog from the traditional MySQL or database connectivity functions that led to SQL injection, but it caused users to create their own functions, which is kind of something we're seeing a little bit in here. Nothing the same level. This looks like it's doing it correctly. But that MySQLi complete was because users were creating their own functions to escape strings or escape certain characters, but they didn't properly sanitize everything out that could lead to SQL injection, and that's how we got that. I'm digressing, and I apologize. Just my instincts on this one, but if all is good, we're going to return user roles, and this means strictly equal to the moderator. So this is checking if we're good to go as the moderator. And then down here, required auth is logged in. So leading up to this function here again, just to make sure we are logged in. But if we're not, we're going to be redirected to the login.php page. And then require moderators. So require auth, which was the function we just looked at, if not as moderator. So I believe that would be if this turned out to not equal moderator, then you get a 403, you get a forbidden, and you must become you have to be moderator in order to perform this. So that's that function check. Next, let's go into index.php, and this is where I kind of always cringe when it comes to PHP and why I like frameworks more or less. The abstraction of logic would be so much nicer than this, because this is mixing your template and your template place, your design, your presentation with logic in here a little bit. So we have like queries in here on top of HTML that's using a bunch of characters. Like, this isn't the worst by any means, but I think like we can optimize this a lot more efficiently and remove things like this to in PHP world, what they refer to as like a controller and a model, where that actual logic of go fetch me this data is using something along that lines. Ruby has something like Ruby on Rails, where those frameworks leverage Active Directory, and you can abstract your presentation layer and your logic layer and your database and all that, and you can not have something like this. But regardless, this is a bunch of HTML in here that's spitting this out. And what is this query doing? Select endgame, username, joins, where verified, limit 10, select all games, order by, description. So this is going to just output all of that data from this query in here. I have yet to still see anything that screams to me injection. This is also requiring the includes database and auth.php up in here. And this session start, that's the function that will check the session data, just to make sure we have that persistence. So if you don't have this, then I believe the session auto global just doesn't work. So this is required. Submit run.php. So include database, session start again. If not is set, session user ID. So if it's null, return the login, exit. Is verified equals false, extract get. What is, this is a new one. Extract, hit extract. What is this? Import variables into current symbol table from an array. Warning, do not use extract on untrusted data like gets, files. Okay, why? So checks each key to see if it has a valid variable name. Also checks for collisions and existing variables in the symbol table. So parameters, an associative array takes treats keys and variable names and values as variables. Okay. So lots of flags. Is there an example in here? So cool. I like examples. Examples are great. So we have size large, var array, and then a list of arrays in here, extract, echo, and then we can run code. That's scary and neat at the same time. So this one is a little striking. Do not use extract on untrusted data like gets and files. So that screams actually the vulnerability, I believe. So via GET requests for faster processing. So I think this would be what's referred to as like a mass assignment or broken access control vulnerability. If somebody is appending their own is verified value to this GET super global or auto global, this variable name, then they could just be overwriting it. So it's something I do see on a lot of engagements, where the code base, so you're looking at not the code, but the HTTP request, and you'll have like a JSON body, and it'll say like username this person, date this time, and you have like this array of data or these values in a JSON block, and you have something in there that says something like is admin equal to false. And then instinctively I want to say, well, if I change is admin to from false to true, do I escalate as an admin? And a lot of times it works. If I don't see something like that though, there's a plugin that I use in Burp. So Burp param miner. I can't type, I apologize. Anyway, what this does is this will actually brute force for particular parameters, cookies, headers, that sort of thing. So this is a great, highly recommend plugin when you're using Burp Suite to check for that. So it'll actually just effectively brute force and say like, hey, does this parameter exist? Does this header exist? And then if you see those, you can start testing for that to see if there's unsanitized input, injection, something like that. And in this case, since it's in this code base, I'm wondering if user supplied input for that get, because we can provide that, will actually be the issue why we're able to submit these unverified ones. So let's continue reading. I'm getting ahead of myself. If is verified, so we're checking that status verified, else then the status is pending. And we have more database connectivity. So a prepare statement, insert into runs, user ID, game ID, my goodness, my gracious. And then there's the user ID. So this checks in there, IIS, ISI. Okay. User ID, game ID, category, time records, videos, verified int. Statement, execute, JSON encode this statement, status, run ID. So this gets provided, this get, and then where is verified. So that variable is in there, and then we're using the SQL query here, prepare insert, so that's getting in there. I so far want to lean to that, but I'm going to read the last file just in case there's something else I need to be aware of. Includes database.php, includes validation.php, game ID, so is set game interval category cat. I like cats. Oh, for category, dang it. So game ID less than or equal to 0, location games.php, and more obnoxious code to do more querying. So prepared. Again, this is being used to escape for like SQL injection, so I'm not getting SQL injection vibes. This is sanitizing that using prepared statements. Special cars, so there's like functions in here that's preventing and escaping that. So I don't think you're getting your typical like client side or server side XSS SQL injection thing. That this is more of a parameter injection attack. And okay, we're gonna end, if I am correct on that line of code, we get to end with some of the grossest looking PHP. So in the body includes header.php. Well, again, why I like frameworks a little bit more than this, but regardless. So table class, leaderboard, table rank, or table row, table header, rank. It is a great day when I get to look at HTML table code. PHP rank 1 while run equal runs, fetch associated, and then loop through that. And that's, oh my god, that's just ugly. It's ugly. It doesn't look insecure, but it's ugly. So I think I'm going to go back here. All right, so I'm ready to accept this as the vulnerable line of code just based off the documentation. Again, checks each key to see whether it has a valid variable name. Also checks for collisions, so do not use extract on untrusted data. And this is why, again, I like using the official documentation on this stuff. They most of the time will tell you where security warnings and issues can lie. So if this is the issue and they're passing in a parameter that says like this is valid, this is verified, then that's going into the table or the database as good to go. It's verified, right? And it matches the description of what's going on. Let's go ahead and just submit this and see if we're right. Thinking, and got it. That was a great challenge. Um, I think it gives a good idea of what a lot of PHP still looks like in this day. And I misspoke earlier when I said this is why I don't like PHP. I like frameworks. I do like PHP in a regard, but I like when it's using something like a framework where the MVC style of it can go. I can abstract out my presentation logic and my database logic, and you have this abstraction of of code that makes it a little easier to read. I think this is a great challenge. I learned a new function, and I hope that you learned a solid thing or two about this. Review documentation, take the code one line at a time, and just get a general idea of what it's doing. If you have questions, always go to documentation, and you should be asking yourself questions as you're doing this code review. But yeah, I thought this was a great challenge. If you guys have any questions, concerns, please hit me up, reach out to me. I'll do my best to answer them as soon as possible. Let me know if you want to see more content like this. Please give me a follow, share this with somebody, all that jazz. This was a lot of fun. Have a wonderful day and take care. Happy hacking.